Is marijuana better for your brain? In 1970, marijuana was classified as a Schedule I drug in the United States, the strictest designation possible, meaning it was completely illegal and has no recognized medical uses. For decades, this view persisted and set back research on the drug's mechanisms and effects. Today, marijuana's therapeutic benefits are widely acknowledged, and some nations have illegal medical use or a move in that direction. But a growing recognition for marijuana's medical value doesn't answer the question: is recreational marijuana use bad for your brain? Marijuana acts on the body's cannabinoid system, which has receptors all over the brain and body. Molecules named the body, called endocannabinoids, also act on these receptors. We don't totally understand the cannabinoid system, but it has one feature that provides a big clue to its function. Most neurotransmitters travel from one neuron to the next through the synapse to propagate the message. But endocannabinoids travel in the opposite direction. When a message passes from the one neuron to the next, the receiving neuron releases endocannabinoids. Those endocannabinoids travel backwards to influence the sending neuron, essentially giving it feedback from the receiving neuron. This leads scientists to believe that in the endocrine system serve the primary to modulate other kinds of signals, amplifying some and diminishing others. Feedback from endocannabinoids slows down rate of neural signaling. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a slowed down behavior or perception though. For example, slowing down a signal that inhibits smell could actually make smell more intense. Marijuana contains two main active compounds, tetrahydrocannabinol or THC, and cannabidiol or CBD. THC is thought to be primarily responsible for marijuana's psychoactive effects on behavior, cognition, and perception, while CBD is responsible for non-psychoactive actives. Like endocannabinoids, THC slows down signaling by binding to cannabinoid receptors, but it binds to receptors all over the spiraling diffuse system at once, whereas endocannabinoids are released in specific places in response to specific stimulus. This widespread activity, coupled with the fact that cannabinoid system indirectly affects many other systems, means that each person's particular brain chemistry, genetics, and previous life experience largely determine how they experience the drug. That's true much more so with marijuana than with other drugs that produce their effects through one or a few specific pathways. So the harmful effects, if any, vary considerably from person to person, and while we don't know how exactly marijuana reduces harmful effects, there are clear risk factors that can increase people's likelihood of experiencing them. The clear risk factor is age. In people younger than 25, cannabinoid receptors are more concentrated in the white matter than in people over 25. The white matter is involved in communication, learning, memory, and emotions. Frequent marijuana use can disrupt the development of white matter tracts and also affect the brain's ability to grow new cognition. This may damage long-term learning ability and problem solving. For now, it's unclear how severe the damage can be or whether it's recovered, and even among young people, the risk is higher than younger someone is, much higher for 15 years old than a 22 years old, for instance. Marijuana can also cause the hallucinations or paranoid delusions. Known as marijuana-induced psychosis, the symptoms usually subside when a person stops using marijuana. But in rare cases, psychosis doesn't subside, instead unmasking a persistent psychotic disorder. A family history of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia is a clear this is not the only risk factor for this effect. Marijuana-induced psychosis is also more common among young adults. though it's worth noting that psychotic disorders usually suffer in the age range anyway. What's unclear in these cases is where the psychotic disorder would appear with marijuana use, whether marijuana use triggers early, its category for theory that wouldn't have to cross otherwise, or whether the reaction to marijuana is an early indication of an underlying disorder. In all likelihood, marijuana's role varies from person to person. At any age, as with many other drugs, the brain and body become less sensitive to marijuana after repeated uses, meaning it takes more to achieve the same effects. Fortunately, unlike many other drugs, there is no risk of fatal overdose from marijuana, and if perhaps use doesn't lead to debilitating or life-threatening withdrawal systems if use stops. There are more subtle forms of marijuana withdrawal though, including sleep disturbances, irritability, and depressed mood, which passed with a few weeks of stopping use. So, is marijuana bad for your brain? It depends on who you are. But while some risk factors are easy to identify, others are not well understood, which means there is still some possibility of experiencing negative effects, even if you don't have any of the known risk factors.